Welcome to GAS, Poetry, Art, and Music. I'm your host, Belinda Subraman. We hope you will enjoy the show. If you'd like to encourage us, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It will help us be seen and heard and much appreciated. So I just have to ask you, Gail, about your family history. And it is incredible that your parents, both of your parents and some other family members were actually in the Holocaust. And would you care to tell us a little bit about what you know of their experiences? And we'll soon get into the poetry, which I know will reflect some of that.
Well, I actually know a lot because when I was a young woman back in the 80s, I went with a friend who did radio documentaries, and she brought all her big mics and everything. We didn't have computers then, and stayed for a weekend and interviewed all of my family members, including my parents and my aunts and uncles, because my father survived along with two siblings, which was very unusual. But he had a family of 6 siblings, so 3 of them survived. My mom didn't have anyone. So I heard a little bit when I was growing up, but not very much. I think, they tried to protect us. They didn't want us to grow up with this terrible history in our minds, so.
I read where your mother helped to sabotage war machinery. I love that.
She did. And I have been wanting to find out more about that. I just wish there were other people still living who could talk about that. But that was when she was in a labor camp called Hofstadt. So she was in Auschwitz briefly. It was towards the end of the war. And because she was still fairly healthy and could work, they sent her to a labor camp. But they all sabotaged the war machinery. And she would, I used my parents' testimony in these poems. So a lot of the phrases are exact quotes. My mother, usually I'll put it in italics, but my mother said, we put the little piece in the big hole and the big piece in the little hole,
Good.
So I gave my mother the book on her 99th birthday.
Oh, good for her. She's still with us.
Yes. So this was just recently. And, I was reading her some of the poems, and she said, I said, well, I remember when you told me all these stories? And she said, these are not stories. This is true. She was thinking of a story as fiction or a poem as fiction. But, much of it is true.
So you were actually born in Germany, I guess, just after the war in basically a refugee camp, right?
Yeah, they called them DP camps, and they were displaced persons camps. So they were nothing like the refugee camps we have today, because some of them were run by Americans, some were run by Russians, but they actually had houses where they had people stay. So they had lots of families, staying in a house together. And they were waiting to get their papers to find a permanent home. So they wound up coming to the United States. To say that, I think about, I'm going to read a poem about the displaced, because I think about the refugees today and how, we should be helping them.
Yes.
And I think part of that is because of my history with my family.
Well, let's talk about your new book, Blood Memory.
Sure.
So it's, tell us about it. Let's hear it from your words.
Well, I've got it right here. So this is my book, Blood Memory, and there's a picture of my parents on the bottom. And the top is a photo that I found online. It's the town that my mother grew up in, which was called, she calls it Lodz, but in Polish it's Łódź. So it's in Poland. And, I just feel so grateful that I was able to write this book, and so grateful that it got published.
And it won an award.
It
right?
won an award. I mean, I was thrilled that Marsh Piercy chose this book, and Marsh Press is a fabulous press.
Yeah.
And, I was reading Marsh Piercy back in the 80s during the women's movement. So I feel really honored that
Well,
she
me,
chose.
me too. She's one of my favorite poets.
Oh.
The Moon is Always Female was one of my favorite books.
Mhm.
And would you like to go ahead and introduce and read us some poems?
Sure. The book is in 3 sections. So to me, the book isn't about the Holocaust. It's about my family. So it doesn't dwell on the horrors of the Holocaust. I mean, we've heard that a lot, and I've read most poetry books about it. Although it's not, I don't discount it, I don't leave it out, but it's just part of the whole story. So the first part takes place during the war. The second part takes place in America when my parents came to the States, and it's an immigrant story. And then the last part is eulogies to the dead, what happened later, both myself and my parents getting older, my father's death, and then a trip back to Poland. My husband and I went to Poland. So I'd like to read this poem, The Dispossessed, which is in the first section, because I actually wrote this book when I was listening to the news about the refugees today, trying to get away. And a friend of mine was in Greece helping people as they were getting off the boats from Turkey. So this is The Dispossessed. It's in 2 sections. Mothers, the first section. I left my father's shoes, laces untied, beside the suitcase in the hallway. I left my school books, my honor badge, and my application to university. I left the buildings stacked like dominoes and the statue of our hero in the plaza where 4 streets converged. I left the rain staining the upstairs window and the courtyard where women washed laundry in a tin tub. I left pigeons in the park roosting in dusty trees, and the Mandelbrot in the bakery, and the braided challah. I left behind my name and my good young body, and I went wandering, a refugee, my dark hair shorn, and a broken comb in my pocket. Father. I left behind my mother's shadow, spilling like rain through the doorway of the house. I left the smoke of my father's cold breath and the horses inside the shed. I left the lake, a wooden boat, girls' fingers dangling in the eddies. I left the lark, the cherry tree, and the bundled lilacs dripping from branches. I left my sewing needles and thread and wooden cloth cut in patterns on the table. I left behind my name and the work of my hands, and I went wandering, a refugee with holes in my pockets and cardboard in my shoes. Yeah.
Well, if you would like to go ahead and introduce and read from another section, that'd be great.
Sure. This is from the second section, and it's about my parents' first date.
Oh, okay.
So it was in the Displaced Persons Camp, and they were going out for a walk. There's some Yiddish Jewish words in here. So where it says kelevs, ganevs, it's like thieves, dogs. And at the last part, it says a potato, a shtick broit. That's a potato and a piece of bread. And the other thing in here is a shoshert. They were waiting for a shoshert, which is a ritual butcher, because they were getting married and they wanted to have food. And so they were waiting for this ritual butcher. So it's called A Short Engagement, Lansberg Displaced Persons Camp, 1945. They were walking at night along the river because my father said it was romantic and everything after the war was beautiful. This was not home, but it was somewhere. But because it was after curfew, the bridge dark over the water, shades pulled across the windows, they were arrested. Can you believe it, my mother says, after Auschwitz, kelevs, ganefs, 3 months later, my parents were married. We had a cow, but we had to wait until we found a chaucheur. We were young people. It was a pleasure living like a family. Food out of this world, my mother said. A potato, a Stück Brot. So it's just, they were just so grateful for anything, any little thing.
Well, you can proceed, I guess, to the third section if you like.
Oh, sure. That sounds perfect. A poem for each section. Well, this is one of my favorite poems. I'm looking through the book because I didn't know what I was going to read. I didn't think about it.
I didn't help you out with any suggestions either.
No, that's fine. It's very spontaneous. I like that. But this is one of my favorite poems because my mother, in her 90s, this was after my father passed away. And it just tells you something about who she is and her attitude toward life. It's called Valentine's Day. Now that my father is gone, I send my mother flowers. She sleeps under a blue blanket, alone on her side of the bed, fluffing both pillows just so. She balances as she walks, one hand skimming the wall. Sometimes she doesn't know where her friends are, who is still living. Einstein was right about time, moving in two directions at once. How everything that happens seems to have happened before. How when I stand before the mirror combing my hair, I see my mother's eyes, and happiness wells up like a wave without warning. My mother looks forward to a lunch of bread and cheese, a glass of apple juice. She speaks of the weather, today being only itself. Her time is reeling in, a line cast from shore, but how she loves the sea, the horizon, the flaming sun. My mother, who knows the brutal world, who survived while others did not, says, "Me? I had it easy."
Aw. Aw. Thank you. Tell your mom hello for me.
I will.
You can show her this little piece, maybe. Thank you so much, Gail. It's a pleasure to meet you and to hear your poetry. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for doing this wonderful work and for keeping the voice of poetry alive during this difficult time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
sleepless night. I lie awake until first light. Push back the curtains, look outside. Why can't you just hold me? Standing alone in the backyard. Bedroom window as distant as the stars, listening to the wind and passing cars. Sometimes I get lonely.
Clearwater. Indian summer day aboard Pete Seeger's sloop. Net is cast into the Hudson. Flop onto deck 3 eels, saturated with PCBs oozing into river from General Electric capacitor plants north of Albany. Pete is angry for these American eels. He will not live to see the dredging of this poison 30 years off. Sky above sails fills with flumes of acid smoke, burns the wings of moths and wildflower petals. This sloop named Clearwater. As a child, I grasp hopefulness versus dreadful odds. I know smallness. I don't yet know futility.
Cheap Thrill, Peggy Eldridge Love. Old tomcat, on his best behavior, rises with the birds, leaves behind the widow who has plied him for a night with ivory soap, red ribbons, and silver belts. He admits to the purr, the rub round her ankles, his best performance given for a taste of salmon, a hot bath, a night by an open fire. Despite his subtle whoring, his lust for who he is will never change. His need to snatch early morning prey from the sky, not for feast but for game. Yet it is she he discovers, a gray Delilah, a closet lover of feathers, who has neutered him with her coy smile, ivory soap, and a silver bell. '69 last century, Peggy Eldridge Love. A 3/4 size cello, a size 4 shoe, and a long dark ponytail moving in slow tandem with the concerto. She was last seat, not gifted, just biding time, treading the waves till May, graduating in May. He had 13 months, standard in Vietnam, and this was 11. Once home, any old song would do. But this was 11, and he still had 2, and first seat got pregnant just before the last concerto. And someone who'd missed the cut filled the last chair, and she became next to last, and then May came. And so did he. At least some of him. He was whole in limb, but 3/4 in heart, and maybe half in mind, but missing in action the next decade or two. She's the solo in this concerto, her head bobbing ever so slightly to the approaching notes of May. The cello is full size, the shoes 7s, the chair first. 13 months was standard in Vietnam, but she's done life.
Okay, John, I've seen your name around for a few years. I would like for you to tell me something about Crisis Chronicles, the history, where you came from, and where you are now.
Okay. Well, I started Crisis Chronicles in 2008 as I was blogging on MySpace under the name Jesus Crisis, which I used for a while until I got comfortable sharing my real identity online. And then when I started publishing, I published a self-made chapbook of my work just to distribute to people at readings when I got involved in going to live readings. And I just, as kind of a joke, put the name Crisis Chronicles Press on it, not really intending to start a press. But then that kind of steamrolled into doing books for other people and gradually graduating from handmade stapled chapbooks to perfect bound books. And so now we've done 111 books so far in the past 12 years or so, and still have a few more in the queue that we're working on. And it's evolved in ways I never could have imagined.
Well, so what are your connections to jail?
Well, I spent some time in jail back in 1993 through 2004. And that's actually where the name Jesus Crisis came from. I was playing piano for the church services in there because it was a good way to get access to a musical instrument, even though, I'm not really a believer, but, I'm open-minded. So a friend of ours stood up in the middle of the sermon. He had mental illness, but it had been well regulated, so we didn't know he had mental illness. He stood up in the middle of the church service and said, "Why is everybody looking for Jesus? I'm right here in your midst and you don't recognize me." And I said to my musician friend who was playing with me, "Oh my gosh, it looks like Joe's having a crisis, a Jesus crisis." And then later we said, we might use that for a band name someday when we get out. And so it ended up being my poetry name for a little while.
I thought I remembered that connection from years ago somehow, maybe MySpace or somewhere. I don't know. I just picked it up somewhere. Well, do you have some poems ready for us?
Sure. Here's a recent one, a rather short one. I'm looking at my COVID hairs.
Mine too.
I think long hair looked better on me when I was younger. You look great with it, but mine is not what it once was.
Well, the more I can cover, the better. That's my philosophy.
That's why I'm wearing this thing.
Okay.
This one is entitled Flagging, after Autumn Field by Si Yun Chang. Leaves of grass wave their proud banners in conflicting directions, are bent by the broken. The body electric, selectively wounded, is broken by the bent where lilacs never thrive. A once buoyant meadow is trampled by twilight, grows weary of the fall, bloodied by witless man.
Go ahead and read a couple more. Introduce if they need it. Just go ahead. You got the floor.
All right. Well, this is another recent one with a similar theme, how, but maybe not as subtle as the last one, about how we abuse the earth, thinking we are, God's greatest creatures and we have dominion over everything and we're smarter than everybody, we humans or we Americans or we white people or, you can define we in a lot of different ways. And we have, the earth is in the middle of a huge crisis right now. And if we're going to address it, we need to start treating the earth as a lot better than we do. This poem's entitled, If You Need a God, Make It Earth. This psilocybic planet cries in surreal glam dialects, phosphorescent trees, and violet sand. I am that I am. Flame blue tent rocks stretch like secular minarets from which unprayers ring with no regard for clocks. I am that I am. The desert lives. The clouds sing. The all in all is glistening while fool's gold extends into the atmosphere, grasping vainly for an illusory savior, trampling the all in all with fear and failing to hear the earth's hue mantra. I am that I am.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All righty.
Really privileged to finally see you, talk to you in real time. And I thank you so much. I've admired your work for a long time.
Oh, well, thank you. I thought since I'd seen you around a while, you must have seen me around for a while too.
Yeah. All the way back in MySpace days, I remember.
Oh, yeah.
enough. Harmony and hope. Chaos seems to be not enough. Too much. In some other parts of the world, praying for you, brothers and sisters. But then again, we're living in the barrio, El Paso de Ciudad Juárez. Chisquis, cabrón. So many death and dying. Business almost like usual. After the smoke and the rain of bullets, it's open season year round. Crisis? What crisis? Hot weather or snowing, and sometimes there's blood running in the streets. Justice? What justice? Only the one at the end of a gun barrel. Mercy? What mercy? Mary's not here, and reality's kicking butt. Watch it! Your mother is no longer here, and this is not Kansas anymore. It's El Paso and Ciudad Juárez, buddy. Not enough. Harmony and hope. Not enough. Harmony and hope. Make it home. Let's put it to rest. Get along. Not enough. Harmony and hope.
I find it interesting that you teach physics. That is so unusual for a poet.
And what I'm not exactly only a physicist. I'm a science space physicist. My specialty is a space physicist, and now I'm working on an essay that is on nanosciences, but with my students in school. I loved education since I was started to work with children, with young people, not children, with young people, senior high school. I'm in senior high school. I was in love with the education. I saw fresh, pure, innocent, let's say, different minds that I could influence in a good way, let them evolve, let them break their chains of mind. And I could do this through science, not only through emotions. In the end, I combined the two. I combined the art with the science, and now I'm using the STEAM teaching, which means science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics all together to work with my children. With my students. I'm using more special tools as clowning, as form theater, Augusto Ball, theater in general, dance, to make my students understand nature, what it is happening around them, and also to understand their feelings and how their feelings have relation with what happened around them. So I push them to see nature as a part of themselves. This was a real surprise to me when some big poets, some poets that I was admiring in Greece, started to get interested about me, started to want to make, some journalists started to want to interview me. Suddenly, I was known through what I was writing. It took me some time to admit that I am a poet. Yeah, this is true. And now that I say it because the American poets started to give me prizes. I don't know what happened. When I started to be more known, I felt very shy, like if I was taking off my like if I was nude in front of people, and this made me to want to hide, but I couldn't stop writing. I was writing not like today, that I write often on internet, but I was writing too much then, so much that other poets telling me, stop doing it, hide what you want to write, don't give it like this. People will be in a few time they stop reading you. And I could not do it because I was very excited with the communication with people. It was the first time in my life that I was feeling really free to say what I felt, not about my life, to touch the aura that overflow in society, in people, in personalities. It was like I was in a big dance with other people, like if I shake hands with other people and meet them for the first time. It was something very important for me to continue writing. I could not stop. I stop. I go less fast now, I think. So I started to write in Greek, in English, because I was shy to be spotlighted like a poet in Greece, to feel so open to other people with my name on it. I was Chryssia Velisariou, the poet, and this made me feel awkward. So I started to write in English because I could not stop writing and English. The English. I thought that all the other people. The language I used, it was not. It was awkward. I wanted to say. I would say something, but it was people abroad was away from me, not so near to me. I was feeling a bit surrounded, crowded by being spotlighted in Greece.
So you wanted your audience to be further away when you started writing in English. You still want to be appreciated, we all do, but let's have it a little bit further out there. So
yeah, that's it. I wanted my audience to be, I wanted to continue this communication with people, but not in personal level. Because in Greece, it started to be in personal level. People started to recognize me, to say this is Chrysa Velisariou. My friends started to read me a lot and criticize what I was writing in a personal level. So,
have you organized poetry events there in Greece for international people? That was the question I was.
I started to organize events on internet. What you are doing now, I was doing it in my start as organizer.
Just poetry, or did you incorporate music and art? And
poetry.
Mm-hmm.
Poetry, because I am a poet. I'm not anything else. This is my book. This little one.
Okay.
I made also. I wrote last year for the National Poetry Foundation some poems in Goddess. This is a book that we make for women each year, and this is the book where the National Poetry Festival laureates and other poets wrote last year. And I will read you something from Greek crisis. Greek financial crisis was something that influenced me a lot because I saw many young people lose their dreams. We had no homeless in Greece before the crisis, and now they're everywhere homeless. So I will start with the poem, If You Want to Find Me. If you want to find me, from now on, if you want to find me, look there where people suffer, they remind me of you. Where people fight, I'll try to give them the peace of which you deprived me. Where kids are prostituted just to find something to eat, you left my soul hungry, I need to feed life. From now on, if you want to find me, I'll be embraced with every lonely soul because you rejected my hug. Whatever you ask to take back from me, I already offered it as a gift to the scorned and denounced ones. I experienced because of you, and I cannot bear this kind of pain.
Nice to meet you and to hear you talking. Okay.
Thank you too. It was very kind that you wanted to talk with me, although I'm so imperfect.
I'm sitting in a light garden, typing my mind at midnight, hearing chimes and mosquitoes. A timer bluntly stops the fountain. Studio fires burn in plastic torches. Trees shift colors under stage can lights. Green lasers sparkle in the great beyond. Assorted solar LEDs highlight flowers and a Buddha sculpture I made while tormented with divorce, teetering toward balance, hoping for a soft fall. Solar lights burn out one by one. The garden becomes dark with a city light pollution crown, and stars that barely blink in the deep blue as breezes breathe songs. A train whistle follows the rules and drowns out stillness. I decide to rest with the wildlife, waiting for the nearest star to wake